Yes, it's been a little over a month since Kenya opened its first smartphone assembly plant in East Africa's biggest economy. Last year, the Kenyan government announced that it will release its first consignment of 1 million locally assembled smartphones by July at a retail price of $40. That's roughly 5,506 Kenyan shillings. But how much more impact will increased local manufacturing of smartphones make, not only in lowering retail prices, but also create jobs in the domestic economy? And that's what the Smartphones Manufacturing in Africa Summit recently held in Nairobi was all about.
Many of the assemblers that we have in Africa are shutting down, or they are operating below their. And it's very sad, from Nigeria to Rwanda to South Africa, very good phones designed and manufactured on the continent were shut down. In Kenya, we have a manufacturing plant, a couple of them actually, not just the Safaricom one, that is operating below its capability. How do we solve for this? The first one is with the boundaries of your country. The devices are being, high import tax. I'll come to the high import tax. Consumer skepticism. So the one thing that we had across the continent is, what is this phone brand? I want a Samsung. I want an Apple. In fact, about this phone that looks like, found out that many people in Africa equate a smartphone to an iPhone. So it has to look and act like an iPhone. How do we get closer to this vision of the future? And that is Angela's presentation. I will not be speaking to it. But the one thing that we found was the biggest hurdle to the scaling of our manufacturers is bringing something from China to Kenya. If you have a phone, you're bringing from China to Kenya. You get spoken to the big ones. There's an OEM that holds more than 45% of the African smartphone market. They have their own thing they are doing. We have spoken to mobile network operators, some of the big ones. Some of them are online, hopefully. Again, everybody's working in a silo. The community, nobody's listening to them. And financial service providers, they are not aggregating their effort to actually push. Like we learned of a great model in Egypt for owning a smartphone. There's a great one in Tanzania for owning a smartphones, but nobody is cross-pollinating in learning. We need to do better in this. So again, when I came in and saw the different people having conversation, I realized the first agenda of this convening is actually working. People are talking to each other and learning lessons. And maybe after tomorrow, people will be actually exchanging business cards and strategies, and we'll see something happening.
We're talking about the potential for Africa to actually get to where we want to get there. We do not have a shortfall of strategies in Africa. We do not have a shortfall of policies, national development plans. We already even have an Agenda 2063, which is so clear. I mean, it's our 50-year plan to get to the Africa we want. The question is, are we getting there? And I think it's the same question we're asking ourselves with the SDGs. 2030 is right around the corner. And we are like, oh my God, it came. You know, it looked like one of those Vision 2030, but it's here. So I think it's the same thing about the 2063. It'll be here in a minute. Last year, we got to the end of the first 10-year implementation plan, right? We had to take a step back and ask ourselves, where are we? Because if we're not monitoring where we are towards the ambition of the continent, then we'll never make the changes and course correct. And you know how it is. 1 degree of deviation will take you to the wrong landing station. We did not want to get there, but because we have made such a disastrous, mistake, and we didn't see it at the beginning, then it's very unlikely to course correct 40 years down the line. So I'm talking about this sub-Saharan challenge, and you will see why. So as I've mentioned, when you look at the Africa we want, goal number 4 speaks to us. How can we transform economies? And there are 3 things that are in that pillar. Number 1, sustainable and inclusive growth. No need for Egypt to be way ahead of the curve, South Africa with, Kenya, and the rest of our brothers and sisters are behind. If we want Africa to punch above its weight as a continent, leveraging the power of 1.4 billion people, then we have to look at how we're working together. So sustainable and inclusive economic growth is number one. Of course, we have to leverage technology. There's no other way we can leapfrog. It's no longer the brick and mortar. In the fourth industrial revolution, it's about leveraging technology. And lastly, economic diversification. Because if we rely on our traditional bread and butter, whether it is agriculture or mining, whichever country we come from, we're not going to make it. It's about the entire team playing on the football field. Whether it's women, whether it's rural, urban, whether it's our economies, how do we bring everybody into the same team and play as one?
When we look at the connectivity, because digital economy is growing quite fast, and you are looking the many Gs that Angela talked, Africa has missed some of these transformation that has happened over the years, industrial, first, second, and within this current revolution, we want to make sure our continent is not left out. The digital economy component is growing very fast. Countries are setting targets of what should constitute their economy in terms of digital economy. We have that potential as a country and as a continent. And as mentioned, coverage of broadband, mobile broadband is good, but still there is a huge gap which is reflected by the topic of today of devices. About 2 years ago, we had a conversation, how do we close the gap on connectivity of our country? And we explored options on how to accelerate. And through our digital master plan, we had already set a target of 100,000 kilometers, additional kilometers to be covered in our country. And we realized that's not the only gap. We've made good progress, and we said as we do that connectivity, one of the things we said, we want to see fiber manufacturing happening in our country. We are proud that with the support of ICT Authority, private sector Safaricom and the others, I think now almost 17,000 kilometers of fiber has been manufactured locally, showing the potential of our country.